Yesterday, in the middle of the night, we decided then to have a ban now on de facto 90% of Russian oil imports to the European Union by the end of the year. And this comes at a time when we see that Russia has disrupted supplies to, by now, 5 member states.
But as we know, every action has a reaction, and turning off the taps from Russia is going to mean a shortage of fuel in the continent. The head of the International Energy Agency says this shortage could be worse than the dark days of the 1970s. And there was more stark news on the inflation front. New EU figures show Ireland is now sitting on a figure of 8.2%. All that led the Taoiseach to warn that we are in a new era when it comes to high energy prices.
One is looking at a different era now in terms of pricing around fossil fuels. The war has really exacerbated this and created huge pressure. We will do everything we can to alleviate the pressures on consumers. But if you look at our EU power initiative and communication, it's very, very clear that if you reduce permanently Europe's dependence on Russian gas and oil, that has implications for the global market over time.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Ciara Phelan, political correspondent at the Irish Mirror, Green Party TD Mark O'Cahasey, Independent TD Michael Healy-Rae, and CEO of Fuels for Ireland, Kevin McPartlan. You're all very welcome to the programme. Ciara, I want to start with you and those estimates from Eurostat looking at inflation, the highest since records began, I believe, and rising, it would appear, at a quicker rate even than this government would have anticipated 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, definitely some very startling figures out today that show energy prices, inflation is skyrocketing. Energy was estimated to be up 8.2% in May, and actually an increase on year rise was 46%. And as you mentioned, I don't think the government actually anticipated how quickly this increase was going to happen. And obviously with what had happened in the EU decision last night in Brussels regarding the ban on Russian fuel, that's going to play a major role in how Irish consumers are going to be impacted in the next couple of weeks too.
And it's going to exacerbate the problem.
Absolutely, and I think that the Taoiseach was very, clear in saying that today, to warn people that your energy prices are going to increase as a result of this ban. And what the government needs to do next now is see on how they're going to shield consumers. We have seen the €200 energy rebate come in, but as a lot of people would say, simply not good enough. More people have less money in their pockets, their bills are going up, and there's no end in sight for people.
And you can see, I think, that people, are really feeling this, and that people's grocery habits even are changing, and there's figures out to support that.
Yeah, figures out by consultancy company Kantar today saying that the average annual grocery is going to cost people an extra €330 a year. And the report also shows the changes in consumer habits, which again proves some negative reading. We see hot snacks, which would be less healthier, such as frozen pizzas, are on the rise, up 9%. And there's actually figures showing that there has been a fall off in the number of times that a person is actually visiting their supermarket, which speaks for itself and backs up what we're hearing from the public, saying that we're actually going without some food and we're choosing between heating or eating.
People trying to really make ends meet and struggling. And yet, despite all of this, we did also hear Paschal Donoghue out today and the Taoiseach out today, reiterating that statement that, there's been $2 billion in measures here. There will be further cost of living measures, but it won't be until budget 2023, which is October. Will they wait 5 months?
They said that on 2 separate occasions, and I think that they might have to give further consideration to that stance, given what has happened in Brussels regarding the changes and ban on Russian fuel, because, they don't like to call it a mini budget, but it effectively was. It's actually not really helping people now. There was, the energy credit, and it's a once-off payment. There is cut and excise duty on fuel, but sure, we're seeing the diesel price of diesel and petrol is touching €2 again at the petrol pumps. So it's not really having a knock-on effect for people. And I would imagine that they will have to give consideration to possibly bringing in some further measures before October.
Kevin McPartlan, look, I know you're really conscious of not scaremongering and, not making people, overly worried or concerned about the price of fuel, but we are seeing, prices at the pumps getting close to €2 again. In fact, I think it's gone over €2 in some forecourts. How bad are prices going to get, and how long is this going to last?
Well, you're right, Ciara, and if I might just take the chance, because you do say I don't want there to be any sort of scaremongering or panicking, to suggest that there is an inevitable fuel shortage is untrue. I think there is a risk, and that risk has to be managed, and we're working hard to make sure that is being done. To answer your question about how high prices can go, I don't know. And anybody who tells you that they do know is lying to you. Okay, apart from any concerns that the CCPC might have about what I might say on that, nobody knows. What I can tell you is that the Russian invasion of Ukraine had a massive impact on the day that it happened on fuel prices, and that impact has continued. It's got worse in some at different times. The announcement of the sanctions in Brussels yesterday isn't of massive direct importance to Ireland because we never imported a lot of oil from Russia.
But it affects the market.
Exactly that. When you take 1/3 of the entire supply of oil and gas, and the thing we have to recognise with the gas piece, there are countries in Europe that use Russian gas for their electricity generation. They're not going to have that anymore, so they're going to divert to oil. So what that is going to do is increase the demand for oil at a time when the supply is going to be squeezed. And a junior cert economics student will tell you the result of that.
But what are we looking at price-wise, do you think? I mean, there was one point, I think, Verona Murphy, the Independent today, was talking about, €3.50 a litre if there wasn't interventions. We had those interventions from the government only 2 months ago, and yet, look, here we are again today, over €2 at the pumps.
Yeah, and I can't say what it will be, but what I can say is that currently today, so Ciara mentioned that we're nudging on €2 in some places for a litre of diesel. The people who are paying €2 for a litre of diesel are paying 86 cents in tax still. So despite the excise duty cut that happened back in March, 86 cents of that price per litre is going straight to the government, and I think it's time government needs to have a look at that.
And the Minister for Finance today saying, we have to strike a delicate balance. We cannot do more for people. No government in the Western world can.
Well, that's simply not going to be good enough for the people, and I will tell you why. Tonight on the way out here, I saw a litre of fuel at 2.08 cents per litre. I'd remind the Minister that on the Tuesday night when the government brought down the price of a litre of fuel from 15 and 20 cents respectively, on the previous Monday and Sunday nights, it actually went up by more than 20 cents per litre. The government keep talking about the €200 and the ESB. While it was very welcome, those measures were very, very small when it comes to impacting in a positive way on the people's purse. I've continuously said the most important indicator that we have of public finance is a thing called mom's purse. It's what's inside mom's purse on a Friday evening. And unfortunately, mom's purses get a fair battering at the moment. And the people are simply going to say now that it is not acceptable at this time for the government to be taking maybe over 65% of the cost of every litre of fuel. That's not acceptable. The government turning a blind eye to our energy security by telling us, because the Greens insisted on it, that we won't have an LNG facility below in Shannon LNG. That was a ridiculous and stupid measure for them to bring into the programme for government. In the previous programme for government, it was deemed that we should have an LNG facility below that. And then in this government, they've said no, just to pacify and cozy up to the Greens. Those type of policies. And remember now, the Minister is talking about trying to protect people. And a couple of weeks ago, they were inside the government and they're introducing more taxes, carbon taxes, and tell us, well, we have to do this. The government are going to have to realise the pain, the hurt, and the suffering that people are going through at the moment. All they're trying to do, Minister, and don't forget this, they're trying to do a thing called exist and live, and that is extremely difficult at present.
All right, I want to let the Minister respond to that.
Good evening, Michael. I mean, the point I would make to you is that, as a government, we have to balance all of the needs that are there. You will be the first person, along with many others in the Dáil, in the lead up to the budget, to look for more money for education, more money for roads, more money for healthcare, more money for climate action measures, and a whole range of other issues. So I have to make sure, along with Minister Donoghue, that we use taxpayers' money wisely. We absolutely recognise that many people are struggling at this time. That's why we did bring forward those measures. But we have to make sure we manage the public finances responsibly. We're still going to have a deficit this year. That's the forecast. The cost of borrowing is rising for the country. So we have to bring the country through this period, support people in the best way we can. But to suggest that we can meet all needs and we can do everything and offset all of the increases as a result of the war in Ukraine is just not realistic, or in my view, is not being honest with people.
And touching that 86 cents that Kevin McPartlan talked about, that's the money the government still takes from fuel at the pumps. Touching that is not realistic, is it not?
So any further change in excise duty and all matters relating to taxation, Ciara, will be a matter for the budget and the finance bill. And, that's something Minister Donoghue will consider, along with all of the other demands that he has in relation to taxation. We have to govern for the whole country. We have to ensure that we have the resources to meet all of the priorities, make sure we build houses for our people, that we can reform and invest in healthcare. So we do have to ensure we strike that right balance. And I acknowledge it's a difficult one at the moment because a lot of people are hurting. But our first duty is to make sure we don't make the situation any worse and that we try to bring the country through what is a challenging period.